Thank you for Patreon now for donating to the Patreon.
Hey guys, it's Vadiazo, back in the Card 5 Vanguard deck profile. So hope you guys enjoyed. Don't like, comment, subscribe, and Stoicheia. This time we're covering set 11 Stoicheia Shieldfisher. Before we get started, let's remember these decks are built for fun. They're not meant to be optimal. If they're optimal, it's by accident. And yeah, so if you have a better build, then go ahead and go for it. But these are just my builds to screw around with. So Shieldfisher, yeah, that 118k base grade 3 from Stoicheia that you pretty much can't use if you call anything from, or if you call from hand that turn. Well, if you only call from hand that turn. However, because Zorga exists and like half the Zorga engine is ran in this, you can just kind of bypass that entire rule. So unless you brick hard, you're pretty much guaranteed to proc off the Shieldfisher's effect and have an 18k base Vanguard that can swing. So let's go and get started, shall we? Because this deck, honestly, it gets the numbers, it gets the consistency. It's basically Zorga, but like a few less steps to go through, more or less. Let's go and get started, shall we? First up today, we have our starter and Dream Nibbling, grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 6k base, auto and road pine, 1 second draw a card. Standard starter is provided, it's just a free draw if you win second. None of the ride line in this deck requires a specific starter whatsoever. You can make this whatever you wanted. I just chose to go with Dream Nibbling because I'm already using the rest of the Zorga ride line, so might as well outside of Zorga himself, so might as well, you know, go the full line outside of that. So one of Dream Nibbling, again, you can make it any starter you want, but the free draw is nice to have. Then we have our Overtrigger and Source Dragon DD of Blessings Blessed Favor. Grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k power. Overtrigger, you email Overtrigger in your deck. When revealed as a trigger, move that card, draw a card, choose one of your it gets what's moved for the turn. And if you revealed it during your draft check, activate its additional effect, which you can draw a card, choose one of your it gets a crit for the turn. All everyone gets plus 10k power. And if your damage zone has the same number of cards as your opponents or more, choose a card from your damage zone to heal it. All around, pretty solid. It's Blake and everything bagel, which is why it's one of my favorite overtriggers, because you're guaranteed the 1 million in draw, and then if you got it in a drive check, you get a second draw, so you have a total of 2 draws. Someone gets a crit, probably the thing you gave it the 1 million to, unless it's the Vanguard, and then all your front runners get plus 10 as well, so you get a front trigger, and then you possibly get a heal trigger on top of that as well. So all around, Blessed Favor is a very solid, just over. I really like Blessed Favor a lot. You can run the, Cry Elemental overs if you want to, because, you know, the 1 million to rear guard seems nice and multi-attack, but I prefer Blessed Favor because, again, it's just fun pulling off Blessed Favor. So, one of Blessed Favor. Then we have our normal triggers. We have 2 front triggers and Frenzied Hares, grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 4k power, continues guard, so good opponent's Vanguard to grade 3 gets 5k shield. And 20k shield is very nice, and the deck doesn't need too much power, but on occasions, you do want, like, higher numbers, so having, like, the 2 fronts there is just a nice push, like, hey, sometimes you're going to hit extra numbers, and also, again, being a 20k shield is nice as well, so 2 of. And then we have our 3 draws in Serene Maiden Lena, grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 4k power, continues guard, so good opponent's Vanguard to grade 3 gives 5k shield. So, you don't run this on an absolute 4 and then up the crits that we're about to see to, like, I think it would be 7, simply because, again, the fronts do add extra shield, and that 20k versus that 10k does make a difference, but also because the draws are helpful to help increase the hand. So you have, like, you can draw into the things that allow your Vanguard to attack more is one way we could put this. But again, sometimes, depending on the situation, it's doubtful, but if you really bricked hard, then you're not going to have the numbers to push through, which is why the fronts are here. So 2 fronts, 3 draws. And then we have our crits. So we have 2 crits in total of, well, not 2 crits in total, 6 crits. 2 of them being Abyss Temptation, grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k power. This can really be any crit you want. I just chose Abyss Temptation because fits the theme of Zorga over here. And then we have 4 crits, and Inspiring Maiden Alana, grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 4k power. Critical trigger, auto react, and about to boost it, put this into solo, choose one music, gets 2k for the turn. It's just to get a soul 2k. Like, the 2k doesn't do much, but on occasions, if you are going all in right from the get-go, and by right from the get-go, I mean turn 1. Well, if you went first, well, sorry, if you went second and you're going all in, well, actually, no, yeah, it would have to be you went first and then you go all. Point is, if you go all in right from the get-go and you went, regardless of which order you went, you're probably going to run into a soul problem if you keep that up consistently. So, for Alana to help manage that a little bit easier, and also this deck can, like, loop stuff out from drop zone very easily, so even if you use up 1, it's probably going to get back on board anyways if you really need it. So, for Alana, then we have our 4 heal triggers and LG Pixie, grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k power. Just a standard heal. I don't like the effect heals too much. They're too situational in my opinion. Them being 10k shields most of the time and only 25k shields in very specific situations. I'd rather have a consistent 15k over a fluctuating 10 to 25. But if you want to run the effect heals, go ahead. But I do prefer the normal heals. Then we have our grade 1s. First up, we start off with the card that will cause the soul problem, so that's where Alana's comes in for. 4 copies of Spiritual Body Condensation. Grade 1, normal order plate by Soul Blasting 1. Choose a card with grade equal to or less than your Vanguard from your drop zone, call it to rear guard, and you get plus 5k for the turn. All around, pretty solid, because for the Vanguard, for Shieldfisher to be able to attack, you just have to call something from that isn't from hand this turn. Doesn't matter how many times, it doesn't matter where it's from, as long as it's not from hand. And Spiritual Body Condensation kind of sets up a whole loop of events where it can call one thing, and then because of another thing in this deck, you can kind of guess what that is based off that description alone, it will call itself. And then you could typically get another call from drop zone as well this turn, depending on what you have access to. So around Spiritual Body Condensation is pretty solid. You can play it the second you get from grade 1, though technically you're not going to have soul at grade 1, so you can play it when you get to grade 2, technically speaking. You can start rushing when you're at grade 2 and start, you know, just pushing your opponent to higher damage. So 4 Spiritual Body Condensation, very solid order. I like having it a lot, and it's just nice to have, so 4 of. Then we have 4 copies of Surging Sharp Fangs. The reason this deck exists. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 15k base, continuously cannot be ridden, and auto placed on rearguard circle from hand, retire this unit. I remember when I was thinking about building a Shieldfisher deck, I sat there for like a solid 2 minutes thinking, if I'm doing just calling from drop zone, at that point I might as well build Zorga. So what can I warrant that I wouldn't play in Zorga just because of either space or something else? And then I immediately thought back to, wait, there's that, because I was also building Musashi at the time, and I was thinking that I wanted to put that in that Blaze Maiden that had 15k base on the Vanguard circle. I was like, it can't be written, can it? So I went to go check, and yeah, it can't be written. But then I thought about it, and I was like, oh wait, Stoicheia has one too. So I went to go find this thing, and after about 5 minutes of searching on the grade 1 page, because it has a different name on the fandom than it has in Discord, and that was Surging Sharp Fangs. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 15k base. It cannot be written, and when it plays from hand, retire it. Very solid grade 1, because while yes, you can't place it from hand, I mean you can place it from hand, it'll just die immediately. You can use this as discard fodder, and then you can just call it via effects from the drop zone, and automatically it will stay on the board. That is a constant 15k booster you have, and when you have a rear guard that could possibly be a 15k swinger, so that's automatically 30k without triggers, persona ride, anything else, or be a extra critical, granted that would only be 20, but still without triggers or persona ride, but it still has double critical. All around, it's pretty solid, and if you fill up your entire back row with these things, great God, I pray for your opponent, because that's probably an extra 10k drop per attack. So 4 of Surging Sharp Fang. This thing builds up quickly, it acts as discard fodder, it acts as discard fodder is pretty much all I can say. I was going to say something else, I forgot about it. But it also acts as guard power too, because, you know, it doesn't get retired from guard circle, so it gets retired from rear guard circle. So 4 of Surging Sharp Fang. Good grade 1, easy recyclable target, and probably the first thing you're going to call with your abilities, so 4 of. Then we have 4 copies of Blessed Rain Fairy. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, act drop zone. If you have a Vanguard Shieldfisher in its card name, card must 1 call this card to rearguard circle and gets plus 5k for the turn. All around, nice. This deck will technically run into a soul, or not a soul problem, a counterblast problem if you spam every single card that can counterblast every single turn, but there are ways to mediate that, so it won't have too bad of a problem. But being able to call itself just by simply having a Shieldfisher Dragon is great, because that means you don't have to worry about all these convoluted combos that involve you calling from drop. As long as this thing ends up in drop at least once, you can just call it back and now Shieldfisher can attack. And this is a 13k base for the turn, meaning it's either 13k booster on a 18k Vanguard, so 31k swing without persona rides or triggers, or you just call this the front row and boom, unless your opponent also has an extra powered Vanguard. Both this thing and the Vanguard can hit it. So 4 of Blessed Rain Fairy. Very solid grade 1, calls stuff from drop, triggers Shieldfisher's ability on her own, just an easy 4 of. Then we have 4 copies of Performing Petal Diantha, the other really good grade 1 in this deck. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, auto placed on rear guard circle from your hand. If you have Vanguard, that's grade 3 getter. Counterblast 1, choose a grade 3 list card from your drop zone, call it to rear guard. Okay, I'm gonna tell you right now, the only ever target you're probably gonna call with this is this, and if it's not this, it's the grade 1 of the ride deck, and if it's not that, then it's Alana, and then if it's not Alana, then it's this. So, like, there are 4 different targets already for you to pick, and there's a high chance you're gonna end up with one of them in drop. Like, very high chance. Again, the only way you don't end up with one of those in drop is if you brick hard. So, take that as you will. Anyways, the other abilities continues rear guard during training. If you have 2 or more back row grade 1 or lower rear guards, it gets plus 5k power. So, yeah, I'm gonna tell you this right now. This deck kind of plays like Luard, more or less, where you get a, well, you don't get a full board of grade 1, so I guess like that's where it differs with Luard, but it pulls out grade 1s consistently enough to where you're probably going to get that 5k, and if you don't, again I say, you bricked hard. By the way, what I mean by bricking hard is you get nothing that calls from drop, which has happened to me once, and then it hasn't happened ever since then, but you get no cards that call from drop, and you get none of your discard targets, which in its own right is almost impossible considering every card in this deck can be turned into a discard target in the right way. But yeah, it is technically possible, but it's very unlikely. So 4 of Diantha, very good. She will most likely always be a 13k booster or swinger, and she also is a guaranteed fetch the Surging Fangs from drop zone to get a 15k booster out of it as well. 4 of Diantha. Then we have 4 PGs in Planar Prevent Dragon, Great One Boost, 0 show 6k base, continue your Sentinel, you have to 4 stones in deck, I'll put on Guard Circle, choose one mutes, it cannot be hit on the battle, and if your hand is 2 or more cards, choose a card from your hand, discard it, standard PG, no special battle basically needs, if this and only one of the cards you place it on Guard Circle, you don't have to discard one because that's great, which means you can be as aggressive as you want in the early game, and like I said, this deck tends to rush the second you get the chance to, so being able to, you know, survive your opponent's big counterattack just by simply throwing this down when you don't have any other hand cards is great. Granted, sometimes that won't come in useful because most of the time you're just calling from drop. You're mostly committing at most 2 to 3 cards from hand to make a board. The third card isn't actually to make a board. The third card is to most likely redo your entire BS so you can get your resources back, and then you just pay the remaining cost from Counterblast just to get the stuff back that you killed. So all around, or they just come back on their own, one of the two. But all around, like, Planar Prevent's nice to have. You can run Custodial Dragon because it does the exact same thing. But I prefer Planar Prevent, just because, again, it's mostly the Zorga line, and, like, Planar Prevent came out with Zorga, so might as well. For Planar Prevent, though, again, Custodial Dragon works just as fine, but I prefer Planar. Then we have the last grade ones, the grade 1 of the rad deck, none in the main deck because you really don't need in the main deck. One of in the rad deck of Ranker Chain, grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, active Vanguard once per turn, soul boss 1, draw 2 cards, you have to 1 order from your hand, discard it. If you did not discard, choose 2 cards from your hand, discard them, and then continues rear guard. If you played an order this turn, it gets plus 2k power. Okay, cool. Again, this is not one of your, it is technically one of your revival targets after, like, I think, this thing, Critical Trigger, I think, and herself. But, all around, though, pretty solid. Like, it's almost guaranteed to have 10k because most of the time you are going to play an order every turn. And then that soul boss one to draw 2, yeah, this is where you kind of can tell if you're going to brick or not. If you don't pull an order by this point, so like your opening hand, then your draw for turn, so 6, your drop and draw, or like your drop for ride deck, if you went second, then you draw again, so 7, and then this skill to draw 2 more, so either 8 or 9 cards. If you have yet to see an order, I'm going to tell you right now, you've probably bricked. There's a high chance you probably bricked. Better yet, if like 2 or 3 cards in your hand are triggers, you probably bricked. And you're probably not winning this game unless you see an order really quickly. So, one of Ranker Chain in the ride deck. It is nice to have, you know, it helps filter through the first few cards just to say if you bricked or not. But then also in the sense that it can get orders into drop zone and then you can fetch those orders back later. Or it can get your discard fodder such as Surging Fang over here into drop zone or Blessed Rain Fairy. It basically sets up your entire drop zone. That's what I love about this deck. Anything is discard fodder, or mostly anything is discard fodder, so you don't really have to worry about what you're discarding at all. But one of Ranker Chain in the right deck, nice to have. Worst case scenario, if you do have to call him from drop zone, he's a 10k base, but again, he does his job well in the Vanguard Circle and getting stuff into drop and drawing cards. Then move on to our grade 2s orders, or just grade 2s in general. First up, we have the order, and that's 3 copies of Tearful Malice. Okay, we all know that if I have a way to shove this into a deck, I'm going to shove this into a deck because Tearful Malice is one of my favorite, if not my favorite order from Stoicheia. Grade 2, normal order. Play this card by retiring 2 rear guards, draw a card, put this card to soul, and countercharge 1. All around, pretty solid because killing 2 rear guards is great because, stuff like Diantha will immediately make up one of them just by calling her, and then by using her ability, she'll make up the other one. If they're roaming Prism Dragons, yes, that's in the deck. You can just call those 2 back. If you have Blessed Rain Fairies in drop zone, you call them back, etc. And being able to draw a card, send to soul, and countercharge 1, well, let's see. It fixes the sole problem of this. It gets you a hand card to call stuff with, and it countercharges to make either Diantha free, or depending on how many Blessed Rain Fairies you have in drop, either make that free or cut the cost in half. 3 of Tearful Malice. Very solid order, helps mitigate the cost a little bit. Again, you're probably almost guaranteed to play an order every turn, except for the first turn of the game where you don't have soul to work with. So, you know, you always fluctuate between Tearful Malice and Spiritual Body Condensation. It really just depends. If your drop zone is set up to the point where you have enough cards to get a board after using Tearful Malice, you're going to be playing Tearful Malice. But most likely in the early stages, you're going to be playing Spiritual Body Condensation to make a board faster to rush your opponent more consistently. 3 of Tearful Malice, though. Very solid order. Get you soul, get you hand, get you resources. What's not to like about it? Then we have our only other grade 2. It's the grade 2 of the ride deck on the main deck. Because again, you can call it from drop zone if you need to. One of in the ride deck, Black Tears Husk Dragon. Grade 2 and step 5k shield, 10k base. Auto one placed on Vanguard Circle. Choose up to 1 normal order from your drop zone. Put it to your hand, and then continues rear guard if you played an order this turn gets with 5k power. Okay, cool. If you dropped an order for Ranker Chain skill, whatever it was, whether it was Tearful Malice or Spiritual Body Condensation, you're going to yeet it right back into your hand, which is great. And then again, if you have to call it, you are most likely not going to because this deck has a bunch of better beat sticks than this thing. But also because Surging Fangs is guaranteedly better than this because it also could proc off Diantha, and it also, you know, has the same base power, but it also has a booster, so there's that. But, you know, if you have to call this from drop zone, maybe because you really didn't hit any of your big beat sticks, at least it's also going to be at 15k as well, so it's not the end of the world. It's just not better. It's not worse, it's just not better. So one of Black Tier's Husk Dragon in the ride deck is nice to have. Again, if you have the ability to call it, well, if you have to call it, it's not the worst thing in the world, but it just doesn't do anything to benefit you past just being on par with everything else in terms of power. So just a nice card, one of them in the ride deck and on the main deck you can call from drop zone. Then we have our grade 3s, 4 of Roaming Prison Dragon. Yeah, I will also try to fit this into any deck I see fit, just because it's fun to use. Grade 3, Generic Persona, 13k base, auto drop zone. When you play in normal order, you may call this card to rearguard circle, and if you call it, perform one of the following. If you Alchemy Magic, perform all the following instead. This is probably the one time I will willingly run a card that I can't use the full ability of knowingly. Well, technically I can, I just can't use the Alchemy Magic half of that, which in its own right is technically the full ability, but at the same time you can still use both of the other ones, just not at the same time, or technically you can if you have 2 different in drop zone, but point is, its 2 skills are either it gets plus 10k on a turn, or it gets a crit on a turn. This is actually the one deck where I will not consistently pick the crit option. Because, again, because you can't Alchemy Magic, you can't get both at the same time. So, you do have to choose and pick which one is actually more important to you. Most of the time, I'm going to pick the 10k if it's like, if my opponent is not at 4 specifically. Or if they're, unless I have 2 of these, unless my opponent is at 4 specifically, I'm only going to give it the 10k ever, simply because I want the numbers to pressure with. However, if they're either at 4, or I have 2 of these on the board, or calling 2 of them, then I will give them both the crit, because they're both probably, or at least one of them is in front of a Searching Fangs, the other one's either in front of a Searching Fangs again, or it's in front of one of these 2, which is a 13k booster. So, all around pretty solid, and I probably hit a Persona at that turn too, so they're at least 28k's double criticals, which granted is only 20k drop, but most of the time, unless they throw down a front, that's going to be a 2-card drop. So, all around, Roaming Prison Dragon, very solid grade 3. Adds pressure. You can play this the second you play an order, so as long as this thing's in drop zone, so either rank or chain it in there, or just ride deck it in there, it's pretty nice to have. And again, is one of the perfect call targets from benefiting from stuff like Spiritual Body Condensation, because you can use this to fetch out this and give it 5k, and then via this thing skill, you can call it and give it a crit. Therefore, you have a 25k double critical beat stick, or you have just a 30k base beat stick. So, actually, no, you have a 35k base beat stick. So, all around, very fun card to use. A combo as well with this deck, and because it calls from drop, it benefits Shieldfisher as well. So, 4 Roaming Prison Dragon. Also, if you don't know, the combo between Tearful Malice and Roaming Prison Dragon, kill them, draw a card, counter charge, soul charge, or get a soul, and then Roaming Prison Dragon call itself out. I've heard people say it doesn't work like that. I have heard more people agree that it does work like that. So, like, I don't really know which one is right or wrong. I'm pretty sure it's the one where you can kill them and then get the soul, draw a counter charge, and then call them. But, like, either way, it doesn't matter. This deck can pull off bullshit enough to where it doesn't really make a difference. Then we have our last card in the deck. It's 3 of in the main deck, 1 of in the ride deck of our main grade 3 Shieldfisher Dragon. Grade 3, Persona 13 or 18k base, sorry. Continuous Vanguard Circle, Rearguard Circle. Okay, by the way, if I said 13k base, I meant 5k for this one. I don't know if I said 13 or not. Anyways, continuous Vanguard, Rearguard Circle. This card can only attack if you called Rearguards other than from hand this turn. So, you are allowed to call from hand, to my understanding. No one has corrected me on this so far. So, to my understanding, you are allowed to call from hand. As long as you also call from somewhere else, you are fine. So, all around, pretty easy to pull off. You've got these, where is it? You got this one down here who can call herself. You have this over here that can call himself. And you have this that can call something. Like, worst case scenario, if it does actually mean that you can't call from hand at all, it's not that hard, because as long as you set yourself up on grade 2 turn, and then you just never call Diantha, because, this can call itself from drop zone. You can send it from board to drop zone with Tearful Malice. You can then use that to call this, or you can play this card to call anything among these. So, like, all in all, you are free to, like, this deck can still pull out that ability, even if it is you can't call from hand, even though it's just called Rearguards other than from hand. So again, even if you're restricted to calling something that isn't from hand, like you cannot call from hand for him to be able to attack, it's fine. The deck has a way to get around it. It's just more difficult. But if it's not like that, and it is the way that I'm saying it is, where you can call Rearguards from hand as long as you call something else from anywhere else as well, then yeah, it's also very easy, because Roaming Prison, this thing which can lead to Roaming Prison and other combos, this thing which has benefited from Tearful Malice, this thing as well. So yeah, needless to say, 4 of 18k base, so it's a lot. It's not harder for your opponent to hit you, but it drops the guard that you probably need by 5k, which does make a difference in the end, and also adds a little bit more pressure to the Vanguard swing, because any trigger automatically makes him a 28. So anything that's a 15k normally for a 1 to pass, yeah, no, now 15ks are even. So, or 15ks are like, okay, 15ks would be 2 to pass. 15ks now would be a 1 to pass. So, for Shieldfisher Dragon, just all around, very solid grade 3. Like him a lot. 3 of in the main deck, welcome in the red deck. that's it for the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed. All around, this deck's very fun to play with. Like, it gets rear guards consistently. It hits like a truck when it hits a Persona Ride turn, and even if when it doesn't, it still hits for a little bit of pressure on it with thanks to Run Prison Dragon's double crit if you choose to go for it, or it gets numbers out the wazoo. Either way, very fun deck to play. I like seeing it go off, and I just like laughing at the BS that I'm seeing while I spam the back row slowly but surely with a bunch of sharks that will slowly be the reason why I win, because 15k plus 18k is 33k plus Persona, right? That's 43k automatically without triggers, baby. So without further ado, I'm going to end this one here. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, join us, go to follow Twitch, and I'll see you all in the next one. Don't forget to stand up your vanguards.